Okay. Anyway, you are recording.
Yeah.
You can forward that recording to me. So, namaste everyone. I see that quite a number of people have joined. It will be very happy, delightful, because the number of people that you could really attract to these kind of programs, it's very nice to see that. Now, there are, just before I go to the topic of Yoga Vasishtha, let me give a few ideas connected with that. One thing is that we are saying this yoga therapy, yoga chikitsa. Actually, World Health Organization wanted our focus from of the health uh, shift to be shifted from sickness to health. They said it's not absence of sickness, it's a positive health. This is what they always wanted to have it. But unfortunately, all the medical books that are there in the world, they're all the books about the sickness. Whereas if you could think of only one textbook in the world which eloquently talks about the health, and that's what is the text called as Ayurveda. The very name Ayurveda means, Ayuhu means health, and Veda means knowledge of it. In fact, when you read the Charaka Samhita Ayurveda text, you feel you are reading something like a spiritual knowledge rather than any medical textbook like Merck Manual, etc. But unfortunately, what happened, this Ayurveda got into the hands of the modern medicine, and then they have given the name called as the Indian system of medicine. It's not Indian system of medicine, it's a wrong way to look at it. They wanted our focus to be health. In fact, even the World Health Organization wanted that, but then they didn't know how to bring about that. The definition of health was given in terms of the well-being, where the management of health is in the hands of doctors. Basically, it is to treat the sickness, not the health. So therefore, that there is a big gap between their own definition and their own management. So we are the people who said that let us not call it as a hospital, let us call it as Arogya Dhama. That means it's a health home. And in fact, in the Charaka Samhita, in the third sutra itself, Charaka brings about this concept, saying that, don't try to drive away the sickness, but bring in the health. An analogy that he gives is that you don't try to fight the darkness, but then you bring in the light, darkness goes away. So essentially that we need to see that how I can enhance your health so that that will take care of the sickness. You don't have to worry about it. So this is the whole approach of Ayurveda and the whole approach of yoga also. And much more important about yoga, that how it is important, how it is profound is that Ayurveda looks at the Vata, Pitta, Kapha and the body nature, etc., etc. Whereas yoga looks at not only the physical body, but all the way right up to the consciousness level. On one side that we are the consciousness, and the other side we are the body. So it works at all these personality levels. So your sickness is not that only at the body level, but at much deeper, subtler level it would have started. So therefore, if you can really think of health at the whole personality level, at all personality level, that's the right way of looking at it. This is what is the way that yoga looks at the whole concept. Now, sickness, when I said that, it's not just only the physical level, but it deep inside we can have that. In fact, where that this, these major three texts of yoga, one is Yoga Vasishtha, which is the oldest of the texts of yoga. It's a teaching of Vasishtha to Rama about yoga. The second thing is the Bhagavad Gita, which is supposed to be a teaching of Krishna to Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And the third yoga text is the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Now, all these three have different conditions there prevailing. One is that Arjuna wants to run away from the battlefield. He wants to run away from his activity. That's where Krishna gives him the whole gamut of yoga. That's why he says, Siddhya Siddhyo Samo Bhutva Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. All these things, the definition of yoga that Krishna gives is to motivate Arjuna to fight back to the war. And therefore, that at the end of the Bhagavad Gita 700 shlokas, the last chapter, where Arjuna says, Nashto Moha Gati Bhramshaha, all these things are gone. Now tell me, what should I do? For that, Krishna replies saying that you do whatever you want to do. Yathechasi tathato. That means for somebody who is not physically fit and is feeling depressed, and that's what is the state of Arjuna, anxiety, confused. For such a person, that yoga can help him to bring him back. So there itself you can see that Bhagavad Gita is a text about addressing the sickness of a person. And mental sickness or deeper inside emotional sickness is so important that it can cripple you at the body level, however much you have a training at the body level, like the way Arjuna had all the training. And second thing is Yoga Vasishta. Yoga Vasishta also very similar kind of an incident where Rama is not facing any issues of war or something like that, but Rama was into the depression because the life seemed to be having no excitement, no charm, no nothing. Therefore, he goes into the depression. In fact, the way that he has been described is that Rama was like the waning moon approaching the new moon time, and moon is going down like that. That's how Rama is. And he talks to Vasishta. The Vasishta, the way that he expresses himself is something which is so pathetic. He says that I have no purpose in living. I have no purpose in dying because I don't see any importance of these things. You can imagine what is the degree of depression that Rama was suffering from. And then the whole of Yoga Vasishta is a text which can really bring him out, not only making him physically fit, but mentally proactive, and then he takes up that. In both the cases, it's not an ordinary simple activity because these two yoga texts are extraordinary texts, unparalleled kind of texts. Why I say that is, look at the purpose of teaching of Bhagavad Gita and teaching of Yoga Vasishta. You see, Rama, actually the discussion happened because Vasishta wanted Rama to go with Vishwamitra, but Rama was in depression, but despondency, therefore that the whole of Gita, Yoga Vasishta is given. After that, he goes with Vishwamitra, and morning when Vishwamitra wakes him up, a beautiful sutra, shloka, that comes in Valmiki Ramayana, with which that Vishwamitra wakes up Rama early morning. That's so beautiful. He says that, Hey Kausalya Supraja Rama, Purva Sankhya Pravartate, Uttishta Narashardula, Kartavyam Daivamandhikam. That means to say, you wake up to do what? Daivamanikam Kartavyam Kuru. It's not just ordinary work. This is a work which is going to re-establish dharma itself. So therefore that Rama is the person who re-established dharma in Treta Yuga. So that is the extraordinary contribution. That means to say what must be the wealth of knowledge of Yoga Vasishta to evoke Rama's spirits in such a way that he can take forward that establishing of dharma. That's why we have that adjective, Ramo Vigrahavan Dharmaha. That means to say, as a very personality of dharma. That's what is the beauty of Yoga Vasishta, the teachings of Vasishta to Rama. On the other side, the teaching of Krishna to Arjuna, when you look at it, actually the whole plan that Krishna has been doing is to see that he finds out the best team in the world who can really re-establish dharma. And that's why he assisted Pandavas, Draupadi, followed them, groomed Arjuna, and you can see that how much he has taken trouble. With all those things, he brought Arjuna to be the chief of the army. That means that is what is the training that he had. After all those things, Arjuna says, I want to run away from the battlefield. For the simple reason that he had a confusion in his mind. Gatir Mohaha, the Moha was there. and all those things. That's why Krishna says, Klaibhyamasmagamah Partha. What is this nonsense that you are in that state? So that means actually the whole re-establishment of dharma takes place in Bhagavad Gita teaching. So that's why it's not an ordinary text, extraordinary text. There is nothing like a text which is parallel to Bhagavad Gita. Both these things are to re-establish dharma. So that's why they are there. But then Patanjali, who has given us the Yoga Sutras, he did not have any purpose like that. He did not have any student who has to guide them into that. Patanjali is actually analyzing a very, very deep subject called as yoga. And this has always been there in the culture. And then somebody is needed to put them in the form of formula. I always give this analogy saying that geometry is there always in the nature. Geometry is always there in the nature. You know, you blow a soap bubble, you can see that soap bubble is such a beautiful, wonderful spherical shape it takes, and it flies. And it's such a beautiful geometrical figure. So like that in the nature, there is so much of geometry that is there. But only thing is Euclid came much later and gave the formula for geometry. Euclid did not create geometry. Similarly, whatever that yoga is there in this whole creation itself, and east or west, north or south, anywhere, but that whatever that philosophy of yoga that is there embedded in the nature itself, and that's what Patanjali brought out in the form of formula. And such a scientific way that he presented. One of the American authors said that Patanjali is more scientific than the science itself. That means what an amount of accuracy that Patanjali maintained. In fact, when you really read the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, that you can experience that how much Patanjali has taken care to see that he conveys the whole field of yoga without any mysticism in a beautiful, logical way. And that's given. Not only that, he also gives us the methods of sadhana. All these three texts have got the methods of sadhana, particularly Yoga Vasishta. Some people call Yoga Vasishta as Jnana Vasishta, and that's very apt also because amount of knowledge discussion that goes on in the Yoga Vasishta is unparalleled. A kind of subtleties of the knowledge that Vasishta discusses with Rama, bringing about various analogies, it is something which is really mind-boggling. How somebody could think of deciphering this knowledge aspect in so many different ways and help you in so many ways, it's all possible because that Rama was asking such questions. He is not talking to an ordinary person, a brilliant person, a person who is supposed to be Vigrahavan Dharmaha. Such a person is asking questions. So it's a delight for Vasishta to answer those things and quote various examples and all that. But often people think that in Yoga Vasishta, we have all these characters coming up, like from Gadi to Shipi to Arjuna, Bhagavad Gita, everything comes up. Is it not something which is Yoga Vasishta is given 6,500 years ago, Ramayana period of time, because Vasishta was there, Valmiki was there at that time. But whereas much later, 2,000 years later, 3,000 years later, we have Bhagavad Gita happening. There are some shlokas which are verbatim picked up in Bhagavad Gita and put it in the Yoga Vasishta. Huge text. How can it be possible? The simple logic for that is that the principles that are given in the Yoga Vasishta are what Vasishta gave to Rama. It is directly the principle that he has given. But then later authors, when they had to put this Yoga Vasishta into a volume, then they wanted to add various analogies for that. Whatever the teachings that Vasishta has given, they added analogy. Like for example, they added Shibi's analogy, Prahlada's analogy. So therefore, that they could drive home the beautiful idea given by Vasishta to Rama in the form of these analogies. So this must have been added much later, but how does it matter? The principle is not disturbed. That's what is the important idea of the sutras. In fact, whether it is Bhagavad Gita sutras or Yoga Vasishta sutras or Patanjali Yoga Sutras. In all these things, Sutra is something which is the basis, and on the top of Sutra, we try to build various structures. That's what is the definition of Sutra. It is like the way that you have a garland, a flower garland, and then whatever that thread which runs underneath that flower garland is supposed to be Sutra. So like that, Yoga Sutra as something which is about the yoga philosophy, whatever that is underlying principle. And that is the one which is holding these sutras. Similarly, we have several sutras. Narada Bhakti Sutras are there, Brahma Sutras are there, and Sutra has been defined by our scriptures. Alpaksharam, Asandigdham, Saravat, Vishwatomukham, Akshobhyam, Anavastubhyam, Sutram, Sutravido Viduhu. Sutra is something which is absolutely Alpaksharam, Asandigdham, and absolutely there is no ambiguity. So therefore, in all these teachings, there is no ambiguity. There is nothing like beating around the bush. So therefore, Sutra is very clear. Therefore, all these texts are really important in that sense. Particularly when we come to the Yoga Vasishtha, there are several concepts Yoga Vasishtha work together. And there is a Ekavakyata, that means to say a similar thinking between the Yoga Vasishtha and also Patanjali Yoga Sutras or even Bhagavad Gita, including the Vedas. So that's what I would like to quote from Yoga Vasishtha, where Rama asked the question, Yena praspandate chittam, yena naspandate athava, tad brahma bhrukiyet me yena chikitseyam tadevahi. I'm not going to go to all the Sanskrit shlokas and all sutras and all that. Only relevant thing I'm trying to read that, because there's a question of Rama. He says that what is that which makes this mind to wander around? Ena praspandate chittam. And then what is that which can really calm it down? Ena naspandate athava tad brahma bruhi me yena chikitseyam tadevahi. I see that there is chikitsa in this particular thing. This is what is from the Laghu Yoga Vasishtha. And he says that Vasishtha, Rama asked this kind of thing to Vasishtha. So now Vasishtha gives a beautiful answer for that. Yatha Shaukyam Hime Rama Tile Tailavayo Taila Lavo Yatha Drishto Raghava Samsrishtau Chitta Spandau Tathevahi. Last time also in one of my talks, I said that the whole creation is nothing but spandana. Spandana matrameva jagatu. And particularly the spandana, that movement is something which is there in the chitta. In fact, at another place, Yoga Vasishtha says that Chanchalam hi mano dharmaha yada vahmejvalenacha. Like the way that the fire burns, mind oscillating, mind spandana is a property of the mind, because mind is the part of the creation. And you look at everything that is there in the mind. When you say mind, it is not just only what you think of mind. Mind, intellect, emotion, and memory, all these things are put together. We call it as chitta. Unfortunately, that we can't translate that into English. Therefore, we used a convenient word called as mind, but otherwise it is supposed to be chitta. Chitta has all these things, but the content of chitta, when you look at it, is nothing but about the world outside. And then you are somebody who is free from this world. You are the Swarupa. That's why Chitta Vritti, which is supposed to be natural, and then you transcend that. Often people present that Vritti is supposed to be bad, but none of the acharyas of yoga agree with that. In fact, Patanjali very clearly says that what is that which is coming in the path of your Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which is the vrittis, that chitta which can go to the vritti can come back from the vritti. It is like a pendulum which moves on one side, can also move on the other side. But what is that which prevents that? Is that he gives various things, out of which Vyadhi is Dhyana, all these things are involved. So Vyadhi comes there in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So these are the things which are the impediments. So they are the hurdles. So therefore, if we remove those hurdles, then Chitta Vikshepa stops and Chitta becomes peaceful. In fact, all these things very philosophical it looks, but look at the simple idea, how practical it is, that If you have sickness or something like that, headache or some stomach upset or anything like that, you try to sit down and read, you try to have a control over mind, sit down for meditation, you can't do that. It's so difficult because mind does not cooperate with you at that point of time. So therefore, these are the things which are impediments. But then the very practices of yoga will bring you out from that. So therefore, that he now gives the idea, Drishto Raghava Samsrishtau Chittaspando Tadevahi. And now he gives the idea, Dokramo Chittanashaya. That means Chittanasha can take place in two ways. This is Yoga Vasishta talking about the earlier he said Chikitsa. Earlier about Chikitsa, he says that Dokramo Chittanashaya Yogo Jnanam Charaghava Yogaha Tat Vrittirodhohi Jnanam Samyakavekshanam. These are the two ways by which that you can come to Chitta Nirodha, to Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That can be possible, or the Chitta Nirodha. Dokramo, what is that? Yogam Jnanam Charaghava, Yogo Jnanam Charaghava, Yogaha Tat Vrittirodhohi, Jnanam Samyakavekshanam. Yoga is Vritti Nirodha, that means to say it's a discipline in the Vrittis. And Jnanam Samyakavekshanam. Jnana means basically that you let go so that you become one with the self. You identify yourself with the self, the world is outside. So these are the two methods. And the same thing is given by Patanjali also. He says that Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam Tadnirodha. He calls them Abhyasa in place of yoga, Vairagya in place of Jnana. And very interestingly, even Krishna also the same way, he agrees with what these two authors have said. Arjuna says to Krishna, hey Krishna, my mind is wandering. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna, pramade balavadrudam, tasyaham nigraham manye vayorivas dushkaram. More difficult to control the mind than the wind. Krishna does not discourage him, saying that useless fellow, I said you something to control that. You say it is not possible. What can I do? No, he says, he acknowledges that. He says, Asamshayam Mahabaho. Hey Arjuna, you're Mahabaho, you are great. He praises him. Asamshayam, I have absolutely no doubt about it. But then he says, Ahamshayam Mahabaho, Manaha Durnigraham Chayam. Mind is very difficult to control, but it's not impossible. So there he gives that gap and says that this you can do it. And then he says, Abhyasena to Kaunteya, Vairagyena to Gruhyate. These are the two techniques, Abhyasa and Vairagya. You can do it. And there Krishna very beautifully uses Tu and Cha, Abhyasena to Kaunteya, Vairagyena cha Gruhyate. It is like that both these things have to go hand in hand. Like the way a bullock cart is driven by two bullocks either side, or your car is running on the two wheels on either side, and they are in synchrony, they are in harmony, and that's how basically the whole journey takes place. So your yoga journey also has these two aspects of it. One is called as Abhyasa and the other is Vairagya, or one is called as yoga, other is Jnana. And that is what basically takes you from into the framework Chikitsa. Now, Chikitsa has two different ways. One is the way that you say that pranaspando nirudyate. That's why he gives idea pranadinam parispando vayuna rodyate katham. So anisham charatam deha gehe gahanagamina pranadinam parispando vayuna rodyate katham. Rama asked Vasishta how we can do that, and he gives various suggestions there. Shastra Sajjana Samparka, Vairagyabhyasena Yogata, Anasthayam Kutasthayam, Purvam Samsara Vrittishu, Ekatha Abhivanchitaha Dhyana, Chirameka Tayoditat, Ekatattva Ganabhyasat, Pranaspando Nirudyate. This is the first sutra, but series of Pranaspando Nirudyate, that is there. Now let me explain to you what is the idea of this pranaspanda and then how we can bring about this kind of thing. And then he says about the way that Adi Vyadhi also. This discussion about Adi Vyadhi comes in Yoga Vasishta. Now, for us, that body is separate, and then prana is separate, mind is separate. That's what is the Western model. See, the whole modern education or the intellect way of looking at the human being is putting them into separate test tubes, like the way that you take a rose flower to a scientist and try to find out what is there in the rose. He puts subjects the rose through various tests in the lab. And then when you go back, he will show you 4 test tubes. Say this test tube contains this aspect and that aspect like that. And then you cannot see that any semblance of rose flower there. All these things are there. What is the intellectual content of the rose? But then the beauty of rose, aroma of the rose, or the attraction of the rose, all those things are forgotten. The moment you see the rose, it can provoke in you the idea of that offering that beautiful rose in front of the God, so that today in my puja that I do that. But the same thing, if I show you the rose in the test tubes, you cannot get that kind of a feeling. See, that means to say there is something which is part of the feeling much beyond all these things. But then the way modern science looks at is by putting them into different test tubes. That's how they have put this test tubes of mind is different, body is different, intellect is different, your ego is different. So like that, they have put various test tubes. Whereas Indian philosophy says they're all here. Tenaisha Purnaha. They are not separate, they are not different, they're all together. So that means to say whatever that is there inside is there outside. The whole inside is what is called as chitta, and the disturbances at the chitta level that we have is what is called as adhi. And then when the same disturbances percolates into the physiology, manifest level, it is supposed to be vyadhi. So this is basically the difference. Vyakta, when it comes out, it is supposed to be vyadhi. And say that, yeah, why your eyes look red? What happened to you? We say, and then that person says, yes, it seemed to be that last night I did not have good sleep. There was so much of agitation that's going on in the mind. That means to say there is something like an adhi, which is going deep inside, and then vyati is what is there outside. And many times what happens is that adhi is something we have percolated inside. We have put it inside. And that's a very important thing that Yoga Vasishta's contribution. I don't want to get into that Sanskrit verses, but very simple thing is that anything that you come across in the world outside, immediately you take it inside. Like for example, you see some object, you interact with something, immediately you take it inside. Why? Next time when you see that, you say, oh, this is the one that I met last time, or I see last time, I saw last time. So that means it's already created an impression. Now, few times that you repeat, that impression is created inside you. And that inside impression is very useful. It's not that it's unimportant. In fact, because that we have that memory, it is inside at the vritti level, at the chitta level, it created all those things. Therefore, we are functioning. So it's very important. But only thing, it is necessary. It goes into the memory. But then what happens is that slowly, steadily, that object, first time that when we perceive, it is supposed to be the incident. And then repeatedly when it happens, it becomes like a habit, or which is called as abhyasa. Abhyasa is a habit. Like for example, first time that when you are taking the cup of coffee, when you get up in the morning, you never knew that it is something like that, and then you have it. But day after day after day, you are offered that coffee. Then slowly what happens is that it becomes abhyasa. And abhyasena vina, the life cannot go on. That's what Yoga Vasishta says. So we have several abhyasas. But then there are certain, but then what happens is that this abhyasa, when you are not really careful about that, an incident which has become like an abhyasa habit becomes like abhyasa, becomes deep rooted, becomes vasana. So therefore that habit becomes vasana. What do you mean by that? A habit is where that you are looking for it. It has not really disturbed you. You are looking for it. Like, people who come to Prashanti, usually they are brought in the afternoon and they're very peaceful, happy, nice. They look at the whole thing, nice atmosphere, nature. wow, this is a heaven on the earth. Like that, everybody is very happy. And then they go to bed, they settle in their rooms, nice rooms, get up in the morning. That's where the problem starts. When they get up in the morning, particularly people who are coming from the urban circumstances, and they start looking for where is the coffee joint here, where is the tea available. Until that time, they did not realize that these things are not. So immediately the kitchen people say that there's no coffee here. Wow. Really. So that means you are already habituated. But then what happens is that this habit pulls you. 2-3 days later, if it's only at the habit level, it doesn't disturb you. Actually, you wonder that, wow, I can stay without coffee. I never thought without chai in the morning. I never thought that I can stay in that. I could come out of it. But then some people, this habit has percolated deep inside, so that what happens is it affects the physiology. And that effect, when it affects the physiology, this habit, what we call it as vasana. And vasana is much deeper level. People come and stay for 3, 4, 5 days, and fourth day, fifth day, they come to me and say, Raghuramji, I'm suffering from constipation. I said, why constipation? Because in the morning there is no chai. If without chai, I do not go bowel movement. See, when you are born, the mother did not carry breast full of chai for you, but then you used to regularly have natural bowel movement, everything. Why this? This is acquired from outside. This is artificial. So this artificially we acquire something and which percolates into your physiology. This is what is called as vasana. But then what happens is that if we do not return at the vasana level, these things, then they percolate further deep into us called as samskara. Samskara is not just only at the physiological level, but at the genetic level it increases. So therefore, what we call it as diabetes or hypertension, juvenile hypertension, all these things are supposed to be a genetic level disturbances that we have created. Genetic level restlessness we have created. So the same restlessness, same unhappiness that is there at that genetic level percolates into the physiology, and that shows in the form of diabetes, hypertension. All these problems are vyadhi, but they are coming from the adhi. In fact, this is what Yoga Vasishtha said. So if you want to remove the vyadhi, if you only remove the vyadhi, then if the adi is there inside, adi is going to manifest itself in the world outside. And what I said is a very simple adi that I said that inside that you have in the form of diabetes, hypertension. But when you go to the various personality level, this adi can be in so many different ways. It can be in the form of your irritability. It can be in the form of your own anxiety levels. It can be in the form of your own fear. All these things can be your adi. So at adi level, the description is different, but then it percolates into the physiology. Vyadhi level, we have the symptoms, we have the problems that are there. So therefore, both adi and vyadhi, we have to remove it. It's not just only that we take it, the remedy at the outside, but we go to deeper inside. That's why the way that Yoga Vasishtha suggests this is that try to remove it. Not only branches you cut down, but go to the root of it. Not only remove the symptomatic treatment, but also go to the root of it. Unfortunately, what happened? Very few cases where the medicine approaches at the root level. This is what where yoga philosophy talks about it. Yoga Vasishtha talks about it. Shakha vilavanam kurvan mulakaya paro bhavat. Go to this root, go to the stem, go to the roots, and then correct at that root level, then the problems get corrected. So therefore, whatever that he says, that which can bring about a connection between the body outside and the mind deep inside, or the mind or chitta, whatever that is there inside. Please understand this. The physical body that is there outside, which is suffering from problems, and then deep inside, the chitta, mind, intellect, etc., until that, all that is there. And what is that which is the bridge between these two? And one thing that the bridge between these two is the prana. And the way prana functions is in the form of spandana. Prana means that it is to and fro motion. So that means to say deep inside the chitta, behind the chitta swarupa, which has absolutely no activity at all, which is non-active kind of a thing. And then when it percolates into activity, the first level of activity is what you see in the prana spandana. And that becomes like at the body level. So therefore, what Vasishta says is that why don't you control, why don't you address the prana so that both these things can be taken care of? And this is what even Swatmarama also says. He says that chale vate chalam chittam nischale nischalam bhavet. If you stop the prana, if you slow down the prana, chitta slows down. If you slow down the chitta, prana slows down. In fact, this is such a clear, vibrant truth in front of us. Very simple. Like somebody met with an accident. And when he met with an accident, and there is so much of an anxiety. And that anxiety is supposed to be a psychological phenomena deep inside. And that person, you see that hands will be shaking, and then breath will be fast, and all those things will be there, as if he feels that his memory is not working, he become arrested, he become zombie. And all that what you need to do is to ask them to sit down, peaceful, take few deep breaths. And when he takes deep breath, at once you can see that the shake in the hands comes down, the respiration becomes deeper, and then heartbeat becomes regulated. All these things happen once you slow down the prana. That's what chale vate chalam chittam nischale nischalam bhavet. Child comes running to the mother and is angry, upset, disturbed, and he reports to the mother, next door neighbor boy, he pushed me. But then in that anxiety, in that fear, in that anger that he has, so much of anger towards the next door boy, he can't even say it properly. Next door boy, all those things. And mother says, hey, I don't understand what you are saying. Just keep quiet for a moment. Close your eyes. Take deep breath. Say one om, even that also. And afterwards, he asks, okay, now have you come? Yes. So tell me what happened. And he says, okay, I'm going to go and play with him. And the anger comes down. See, once you slow down the respiration, anger comes down, anxiety comes down. See, that means, is it not that the prana spanda is not only helping the physiological level, but also it helping with the psychological level, or deep inside. So therefore, the prana spando niruddhyate, when it says that, and it is something which can really take you to the deeper level. But in the prana spandana, when you do it, there are two things that are there. One is that you slow down the respiration. Therefore, what happens is that you achieve the one big goal, that is slowing down. You know, there is one very important aspect is whenever the things are fast, you will not have control over that. Whenever the things become slow, you develop your control over that. That's why he says pranaspando niruddhyate. That means you do it and you get the hang of it. It's like the way that vehicle that you are driving at a high speed, you will, if you want to take a turn, if you want to make a something like that, then you have to slow down. You apply the brakes. Once you slow down, then only you can have the mastery over the driving. So slowness brings about mastery. Speed takes away your mastery. Speed makes you a slave. Slowness brings you mastery. This is what is the simple idea that yoga says, that you slow down so that you are the master. You have developed awareness, and then you can perform much better. All these vyadhi disturbances can be removed. So when we talk about the chikitsa, when we talk about vyadhi, of course, vyadhi can be hypertension, diabetes, all these things, which list other things. But adhi, when you go back to it, adhi is in the form of your own anxiety. Adhi is in the form of your own jealousy, your own hatred. These are the things. What is one thing which is at the base of all these different types of adhi disturbances that are there? That's what Krishna gives beautifully in Bhagavad Gita, saying that these are all supposed to be your asuri sampat. And he gives a beautiful definition saying that Daivi Sampat Vimokshaya Nibadhyaya Suri Sampati. And that particular sutra is bodily taken by Yoga Vasishta. So that means to say, all these anger, hatred, jealousy, and all that, they bind you. Whereas Karuna, compassion, pleasantness, all these things will give you freedom. So that means to say, Vyadhi, when you look at it in the form of Adi, it is that which binds you. And Viyoga, freedom from that, is what is called as Vairagya. Vairagya is not running away from anything. Vairagya is very beautiful word. Vitaraga iti Vairagya. That means to say, Raga leaving you. Raga is not holding on to you. Yeah, when you look at the world, house doesn't hold on to you. You hold on to the world outside. If something falls from your hand and breaks down, you feel so sad. But then that object does not feel anything bad about that because the object doesn't require. You have nice, wonderful house, beautiful palatial house, and your property and all that. You live for about 50, 60 years. Afterwards, you are gone. Somebody, your son, and all that, somebody takes it. The property will continue. House will continue. That means that you are holding on to it. They are not holding on to you. So, be in this world, live in this world, but with the idea of Vairagya that you see that you can do this. This is what is the idea. There are several ideas that are given. Ekanta dhyana yogaya pranaspando nirudyate. In pranaspando nirudyate, there is another beautiful idea that he gives, is that purakaya nilayam drudhabhyasa akhedajat. See, Patanjali also gives the same sutras in a very beautiful way. He says that respiration has 4 different steps. One is inspiration, inhalation. Second is the after inhalation, holding the breath, called as kumbhaka. And after that, exhalation, that's what is called as rechaka. And after that, suspension. It is not a kumbhaka, it is suspension, it is kevala sthiti. Why? Because after the inhalation, that you have extended your lung muscles, therefore that there is a pressure. You are holding it with pressure. Whereas exhalation is dropping that pressure. And after exhalation, when it becomes quiet, and that's what is a state where it is no activity at all, no pressure at all, you're free from prana. And once you come to that state is a state where you are neither exhaling nor inhaling. Your whole activity has become stambhana, quiet. That gives you a freedom from the prana level and go to deeper level. That's what is meditation. Prachartana vidaranabhyam va pranasya. When you say pranaspande nirudhyate, that nirudhyate, when you slow down this pranaspandana, then it gives you freedom to hold on to that 4th state, that kevala sthiti, and then pranaspandana is going on either side. Omkarocharana pranta shabda tatvanubhavanat sushupto samvido jate pranaspando nirudhyate. In fact, one of the most important practice of pranaspandana is this Omkara Abhyasa. Aum followed by silence. Many people think that Omkara Abhyasa is Aum, chanting of Om, which has Aum property that are. But then actually, in Mandukya Upanishad, when you go to that, it is not 3, but it is 4. And the 4th is the silence. What's the purpose? What's the idea behind it is? All the dialogues that are going on in our mind, that's what is basically the chitta vritti, mind activity. All our vyadhi, yadhi, all these things are in the form of chitta vritti activity. And that activity, the mental activity or the words that are there, can be confined to, at the beginning level it is a, at the end level it is m. These are the 2 ends of in which all our dialogues are there. Look at the way any dialogue that you have, any language that you take in the world, the beginning sound that you produce for a dialogue is ah. You can't produce any sound below ah, because ah is the one which is starting point. Mouth is fully open. You can't do anything below that. And the last one, articulation of mouth, articulation of tongue, all these things will give you various other sounds. And the last sound that you can produce, you can memorize, make sense, and that's what is the sound makara. So all the dialogues are there between a and these are the two ends, like the two banks of the river, and what flows in between is the river. So what? Therefore, whenever we sing Om, then what happens is that you are enveloping all the dialogues that are there in the mind. They are enveloping all the dialogues that are in the mind. No dialogue can escape Om. Therefore, Upanishad says, Om ityetedum sarvam vidam sarvam Om. Tasya upavyakyanam bhutam bhavishyatiti. Past, present, future, memory, analysis, and all those things. Everything is within Om. And then he says, Tadapi trikalaatitam tadapi omkara. That means beyond all these three, there is a silence. And that's what is also Om. That's what is the Turiya Sthiti. So Pranaspanda, when you feel it inside, that's why he says that Omkar Ucharana Pranta Shabda Tattva Anubhavanat. This Anubhava is very important. Tattva we can understand, I mean, intellectually we can understand, but more importantly, can you feel that silence after the sound, singing of Om? That silence, if you feel it, if you establish yourself in that, then it takes you to the level of moksha, freedom inside. Pranaspando niridyate omkarucharana pranta shabda tattvanu anubhavanat sushupte samvido jate pranaspando niridyate. Then you leave Jagrata, Swapna, Sushupti, and then you go to Turiya. That's what is the step that it can take you into. So all these practices are the practical hints, and then we can do anything. People, when they do not understand these things, they think longer the Om, better it is. They inhale fully, and the full exhalation, they keep saying, oh. Finally, by the time they stop ma, they don't have any more gap to have that silence. So therefore, they drag the inhalation. That means you have not experienced that silence. You are not holding on to that silence, which is the precious gift of that Om. The greatest gift of Om is that silence. That silence is a Swarupa, Atmasthiti, and that's what is the Turiya. We need to reach that state. So therefore, sing Om. Feel that silence which is after the Om. Particularly in Prashanti, when 500 people are sitting together and singing Om, the teacher would have said, let's all sing Om. Some smart people, everybody would have started Om, but some smart people pick up Om in between. Everybody would have ended Om, but then these people will continue saying, you recognize how long their Om is. It's not how long the Om is important, but how much of silence it can take you. That's what he says, that one Om is enough. Directly it can take you to Brahmasthiti, Atmasthiti. That's what is the idea. So like that, there are several things are there. I think I have taken enough time, and I will stop it here. I'll leave it